Hi everybody, I am Jeff with Equipment Zone. It's great to be here again with you. Live webinar printing and showing you how things work. It's a great time to do it. I'm here with Roy. Say hi, Roy.
Hi, how you doing?
Roy is our famous technician who will be doing the meat of this webinar. And today we're talking about sweatshirts and printing on sweatshirts. You may be asking yourself, why are we talking about sweatshirts at the beginning of summer?
Or hoodies.
Or hoodies? The reason we're doing that is because now is the time to start thinking about it, preparing for it, practicing for fall, for school starting back up. And while we're talking about school for a second, let me just give you a quick story of why printing on hoodies is such a big deal. So I'm a father of 5. Most of you don't know that. Woo! I'm only second to Jay here. He's got 6. At Equipment Zone, we make up the bulk of all the kids in this family. So I had a daughter who was in volleyball, and we went to the parent-teacher conference for volleyball. By the way, if you go to that, that's code for we're going to sell you stuff, because coaches need new iPads, right? Yes. So at this conference, they give us all the fluff about what they're, the season and the kids, and then they get into their sales pitch about t-shirts. So the t-shirts that they offered were on gray, so very generic. The school colors, by the way, were gold and purple. The shirt that they held up, the gray shirt they held up, had purple and white, 2-color, obviously screen printed, which were okay, except they were selling them for $25. They then held up a hoodie that you could purchase for $45 or the combination for $60. Okay, 2-color screen print. If you don't think that there's profit in that for you, then you need to do some more research. There definitely is. Now, as I was starting to come out of my seat in objection to the pricing, because I know how much this stuff costs, my daughter quickly grabbed me by the shoulder and said, "Sit down." And I said, "There's no way I'm paying that much for that stuff. I'll make them for you on our Epson directed garment printer."
Nice.
And she said, "Nope, I want what everybody else has." So guess what I had to fork out? $60 for the combination of the sweatshirt and the t-shirt.
That's a pretty good deal. That's a fair rate.
Is it fair?
For 2?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not bad.
That's not too bad, huh?
Well, at least they gave you
It only hurts because I know how much it costs to produce, right? So we're going to talk about that today. And I'm going to turn the time over to Roy here in just a second. Couple of things. If you have questions, and we encourage you to ask questions, make sure you ask them in the Q&A, not into the chat. You can make funny comments in the chat, whatever, but if you want to ask specific questions that you want us to address or follow up with you afterwards, put that into the question and answer. So I'm going to go off camera. I'll be moving the camera around, zooming in while Roy does the demo, and then I'm going to turn the time over to him. All right, Roy, take it away.
Okay. All right. Did you show this already?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we started out, again, my name's Roy. All right. We started out with Jeff showing this sweatshirt here. This is an 80-20 mix. It's really nice, light sweatshirt. Depending on the different styles and types that you would be looking at, we also have a 70-30, which is a real lightweight as well. Okay.
What brand are those?
These ones are Cotton Heritage. And then this one here is a 65 cotton, 35 polyester inside, and 100 cotton face. Okay, and it's a zipper hoodie. So I'm going to go through that with you. And this one here is 55 cotton, 45 polyester. So on the different types of sweatshirts, depending on the thickness, you're going to have to play with your pre-treat settings. Adding more pre-treat to the thicker products, a little bit more than a t-shirt on the thinner products, and typically on all your sweatshirts, you're going to be threading them. You're going to thread them on the heat press, you're going to thread them on the DTG. So typically you want to make sure you've got plenty of pre-treat on them first to start out with. And then I'm going to go through some different mounting options. As you guys are just starting out thinking about, hey, do I want to try this? You can order a few. Obviously, you all have the 14-16 standard Epson Platen, which you can use even to do pocket hoodies if you're doing large adult hoodies. All right, so I will go through and show you how to do that if Jeff wants to assist me with the camera. So a lot of you, when you purchased your machine, you may have, that's fine. You may have also received a tuck lock 10 by 12 Platen, which is a great Platen to do youth shirts as well as starting to get into sweatshirts and hoodies as well. You can turn the image sideways to rotate it to where it's going to fit on properly, and I'll go through how you can mount as well as using the 14-16. So we'll start out with that one first. Depending on how the stitching is on the hoodie and how big it is, I can place the hoodie on the Platen, turn it. And as far as any type of lint, what have you, that you would have on your hoodie, you want to make sure that you get that off with a lint brush before you pre-treat, so you're not messing with the fibers after the fact. So on this one, this particular one, I have some seams right here. So this one, because it's flat and it's fairly long, I might be able to turn it this way, or I would be forced to use a smaller Platen. So this one's going to fit actually like that.
What size is that, Roy?
This one here is an extra large. So if you have anything smaller than an extra large on this one, you probably have to get a smaller Platen because it's got the side seams versus a typical seam on the normal hoodies. Now on the hoodies, I'm always going to use a frame because I'm going to make sure that my fabric and any of my other seams are going to be pulled away. So it's perfectly flat on my surface here. So you can see there's no seam shown.
A question about that for you real quick, Roy. On the frame, I noticed that that particular hoodie is a little thin, right? So on thicker hoodies, is that frame going to fit over them?
Yes.
Okay, we'll show that later.
Which I'll show you that in a second. So basically, the next thing that you're going to do is decide, okay, where is my Platen height going to be? So I'm going to start out with my typical t-shirt height. And on this one, I typically double my t-shirts up. So my height on my Platen is going to be based on that. And because this is a fairly thin one, I might be able to get away with my standard setting. So I'm just going to send my Platen into the machine. And hopefully I get no errors. So then at this point, I'm ready to print. So I can go to my printer or my garment creator and print a file. Now typically, because the thicker weaves on the hoodies, you're gonna need a thicker white base in general or more ink in general. So you definitely wanna go with probably a level 6 on hoodies. It's gonna cost you more for ink, but at the end of the day, as Jeff mentioned, there's a lot more profit in hoodies. Typically, you're gonna run up into a $28 to $30 profit range between the hoodie and the shirt. So while that is printing, I could go through and show you on the, if you want to get closer, how to pre-treat one in a second, but I'll let Jeff kind of take a look up on that one. Yeah. So as far as pre-treating goes, you want to figure out how much of the hoodie you're going to pre-treat, which direction you're going to go with the image. So if I'm going to go diagonally, obviously I only need a smaller span. So again, I'm going to bring my collar right up at the edge. I'm going to tuck my sleeves in. Straighten that out. Make sure it's all tucked in. And sorry about that. Grab my handy dandy tape measure here. So I just want to see, I'm right about 12 inches or so. And so I'm going to set my pre-treater about 1.5 inches past that, so I can make sure by the time the liquid kicks on and starts shooting out, I have plenty on there. So I'll just go ahead and make sure my dial is set, because this is a fixed sweatshirt. I'm starting out right in here about 6. And again, you want to do some testing. Keeping in mind, you can do smaller images on the sweatshirts just to test them and see how they're printing. And then go back, add pre-treat after you're curing if you need to, just to kind of get a feel for where you're at with the specific product that you're going to try. Again, you don't want to just bring a shirt in and then go ahead and start selling it before you've actually done any testing. So you can see on here, I could have probably went up a little further, but that's fine. And on sweatshirts, typically, because it's so much solution, I like to go ahead and let them sit for a few minutes. So I'd be pre-treating a few of them before I start my job, and then go ahead and cure them after the pre-treat has an opportunity to soak in a little bit. Okay.
So when you cure that, Roy, my question is, are you threading it onto the heat press the same way you did on the printer?
Yes, I'm going to thread it on the heat press as well, just to make sure that I don't get any of the moisture going to the backside and causing an issue later for me, and giving it an opportunity to be completely dry. Again, I never want to press my collar, so I want to pull that forward. The pocket, it's definitely going to be an issue for me, but that's fine. Now what I can start out with on the sweatshirt as well is go ahead and hover it for a cycle to get that shirt starting to dry out a little bit before I actually did a full press. There is a little bit more time with sweatshirts, but again, as Jeff mentioned, there's more profit. And if a lot of your competitors aren't offering sweatshirts, it's definitely an opportunity to set yourself apart from other people. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay.
So while this is finishing printing, I just want to address, we've had a few questions asking if we'll be printing over zipper hoodies. We're going to talk about that a little bit, but we will have another webinar, live webinar specifically for that, because there's different tools involved in that, right, Roy?
That's correct.
You want to mention that a little bit?
Basically, on your Platen, you can either purchase an Epson medium groove Platen, which is this Platen here. The only issue with that on certain Platens that you're looking at is you don't have the versatility to move anything around. You want to put that back. Stand it up because you're cutting it off. All right, so anyway, so the Platens come with these little holes drilled in them when they come from Livingston Systems. Now the Epson has an actual groove grinded into the PVC plastic that allows for the zipper to lay flat and the surface of the sweatshirt to lay flat all the way across. The thing is you don't have the ability to move anything around. Now the Livingston comes with a couple different sizes. So depending on how wide you need to be, you have a couple different size options. And plus, if you want to do just a pocket area, you can buy the smaller square risers only if you wanted to do something like that. So these Platens are definitely more versatile because you can pull those off and then use the Platen as normal in a base, as the base is just perfectly flat. And then also they do sell attachments that allow for V-necks or a neck that's going to come down a little bit lower that has a little bit of a cutout on it. And that's something you can purchase later as far as an additional item. The other option is using a mouse pad to start out. It's going to work for some of the things, not everything. You're not going to be able to print across the full zipper on the hoodie, typically, but you can print like a logo in the corner on the zipper front and then do something bigger on the back if you wanted to. And you can do that by laying the sweatshirt down, which I'll show you in a minute, and putting the zipper over here, which makes it a little difficult. You got to make sure that zipper is going to lay down below the level of your mouse pad. But the Epson does have the capability of lowering and taking out a spacer if you need to get lower to add and build up your Platen. So here's the finished image on this specific one. Okay. So as far as taking this one off, obviously since I threaded it, I got to just use a little bit more care to make sure I don't ruin the image.
That's going to make you do all that one-handed.
Okay. That's what production's about, right?
You use your hand and your other hand, which is the mouth.
I want to make sure I'm just kind of relaxing the shirt too on this thinner one, so I'm not stretching the ink out as it goes to start to cure.
Okay, while that's cooking, can we ask a couple of questions?
Sure.
All right, we had a lot of questions come in. So let's start with, for everybody that was thinking about zippers, Roy just answered that. We are going to have a separate dedicated webinar to just hoodies with zippers.
And that'll be using the risers as well. But this one is kind of, as Jeff mentioned, start thinking about doing something different, especially if some of you have some free time with this COVID situation. You know, you can order a few sweatshirts, test them out when you have some extra time and have the ability to start selling, you know, a few at a time, getting a better feel for it with the equipment you already have.
Do you always have to thread to print hoodies?
I would, yes.
Okay.
Because they're thicker. And the material is gonna lay flatter. I mean, it's easy to get something in between one of the strings or something if you're just throwing them on and doing it the other way. Obviously, that would be a faster route, but the quality of the shirt is going to be compromised with anything having to do with having to lower my Platen further because there's something in between the two layers that's causing it to not sit completely flat.
Clarification on the pre-treatment setting. If you're using a speed treater,
Yes.
what would the settings be? Could you describe that? 5, 5.5, 6? What would you do?
This particular hoodie that we did just a second ago here,
Oh,
this one we actually pre-treated just under 6, like 5 3/4. Okay. Now, that's a fairly thin hoodie, actually. Now, this one, I'm definitely going to be, because it's fairly thick, as you can see. This one, I'm definitely going to be about 6, 6 1/4. And again, like I said, reduce an image down and just print a small image on part of it and test some of your images. Because like I said, you're going to have to crank up your ink a little bit in order to fill in on these hoodies because the weaves are a lot thicker and looser. So I need to make sure I have ample pre-treat and ample ink on that shirt. So the cost is going to be a little bit more. And then as far as ways to
Roy,
this specific hoodie,
Roy,
yes,
just because what you're about to do is perfect with this question.
I see you turning the hoodie sideways when you threaded it. Is that something you have to do? You choose to do just with thick hoodies? What's the strategy there?
Well, basically, when I turn the hoodie, I'm just trying to mount it on there. So this one right here is, I got a pretty short width between the top and the bottom. So there's no way I'm gonna be able to print this hoodie this way on this platen, because I have my neckline right here and I got my seam of my pocket here. So this one, I'm gonna just grab it and start twisting it around. And again, when you take it off with the image on it, you're gonna have to go through the same process and be careful that you don't damage the image. So I'm gonna have my neckline right here on the edge, my pocket line right here on the edge. Now, because of where it's at, I don't have the ability to print with my platen height, okay? So I'm gonna use my ring again. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull this down a little bit, okay? Then I'm gonna go over here and do the same thing and make sure it's completely square. Now, after I do that, I'm gonna kind of shove the frame down, but then I'm gonna lift it up slightly, okay? And then push it down again. What I'm doing is allowing, if I have fabric that's kind of torqued and stretched, it kind of relaxes everything and it starts to lay flat, okay? And then I just make sure that there's no air. If there is, then I can grab the side and just kind of pull it down a little bit and get it back tucked in there in the areas that it's still a little too loose, okay? Now, once I do that, I come back over here and I'm gonna hit my platen button and let my platen go in. Now, that actually didn't beat. And I'm thinking where I'm at on my platen height. I'll take a look at that real quick. A little hard to do after you tuck all this stuff in here. But my bad eyes. I'm actually at platen height 3 right now. And on this specific sweatshirt, after threading it, I'm able to stay at a pretty high platen position. Now, if I start using a mouse pad, then that's going to take me down to a lower point. Okay, so talking about if you wanted to try to do something as far as a hoodie with a zipper, and you want to try to mount something like this, just to do a logo, again, a mouse pad works great for that. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this sweatshirt off right now. Retreat the back of one of those.
That zipper hoodie.
Oh, you did the back of this one? Okay. So on this platen is a little large to try to do the zipper and get it off of the platen. So I'm going to go with a smaller one. And then I'm going to use my mouse pad. Okay. And I can position my mouse pad wherever I want, keeping in mind my grid on my garment creator when I do that. So if I'm going to put a logo, either left or right side, whichever. So I can come up here and put my hoodie up on here like this. And then I want to start positioning it and bringing my zipper and getting it flat. Tucking that in first, making sure it's square, and then kind of square up the shirt. Now, my highest point is definitely going to be where the mouse pad is. Okay. And mouse pads, I always have a lot. You can go online and order a pack of like 15 of them or something, or maybe 25 bucks or something.
Zoom in, get close on that edge, just so it's about it.
You just want to make sure that zipper is completely flat. So let me bring you in here a little closer. Okay. So I can show you how my platen height, it's higher here with the mouse pad.
You can even see the edge of the house.
Now the next thing I'm going to do is do one of these and kind of make sure that I'm going to clear that before I start letting it go in, because it's going to pretty much ruin everything I've already done without going too low. I could actually also have the platen go in and then stop it, bring it out, but I am going to clear it there, so I'm going to go ahead and go in. First thing that happens when you use a mouse pad is you actually end up having it hit right here and grab and pull everything off. And we don't want to do that to the machine. So right now, this might seem a little cumbersome, but once you do it, you can write these settings down for the future. So it's only a one-time process. So I was at 4 on that one, and now I'm at 4.5. And I'm just going to go in half increments until I actually get to the point where I no longer have an issue. And that actually gets me out of my platen error range and brings me back into focus as far as the machine goes. The other thing is, if you have an uneven surface and you're a little skeptical that your platen's a little lower than you want, go ahead and change your print to unidirectional. And unidirectional gives you a lot more latitude. When the printer's printing, it prints in one direction instead of print, 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 print. It takes twice as long, but it's basically the way you'd want to do that to alleviate any issues with the quality of the print.
So while you're doing that, Roy, somebody asked the question, and
Yeah,
I know
that's
we've
fine.
covered it, but it was just, sometimes we miss that, about turning sideways on a medium platen and a large platen. So it all depends on the size of your hoodie and picking the right platen and the right space between that neckline and the pouch to size it up.
Yeah, exactly. So if I have a smaller hoodie, typically anything below a large, if it's a small size or small cut, now I have no more errors. So I'm ready to print. If it's a small size hoodie, I'm going to have to go to the smaller platen and rotate my image to where it goes across the shirt and narrower because of the pocket if I'm going to do it that way. Okay. No, I didn't have anything set up. I was just going through the process of doing that.
So someone asked about that. They said, how did you pre-test that to see if it would beep or not? That's what you were doing, basically.
Yes, that's what I'm doing. Basically, coming back to the printer itself, you have your platen to move in and out with this button here. Okay. I'm sorry. You have your platen button right here to move the platen in and out. This isn't just if you get an error or something and you need to move it, or you bump into the front of the machine, which happens a lot when you're loading shirts, and it gives that little icon where you need to push it first before it starts printing. It's also perfect for setting up your platen height prior to printing, because when you hit print and you go in and get a platen height error, it takes a longer cycle to bring that platen in and out. If I do it this way, you can see the platen moves pretty fast, and it's just a lot quicker for me to get to that point to get my platen height and set that. And now again, now that I know what it is, when I use a mouse pad with this sweatshirt style, I'm going to go ahead and make a note in the future that my platen height is set at 7.5. Okay. Now the next thing I wanted to show you, if you got really thick sweatshirts and you're running into a problem, is you have the ability to take this off. Okay. There is a set screw on the back pin As soon as you unscrew that and take it off, then that allows me to take my Platen adapter off, pull this off, and then I have 2 spacers. So if I have just a little bit more I need to go, I can just take the small one out. If I think I'm gonna have to go a lot more, I can take the thick one out and put the small one back in. As you can see, there's a pin in the front. They have pins on them. They only go in one way. Both the pins line up to each other. And then this is just basically gravity. So it really doesn't matter how you put it on, because once you put it in, it's going to start clicking anyway. Okay?
So that would give you more clearance for a super thick hoodie.
Exactly. Or any other things you decide you want to start testing after you get the hoodies down. Okay?
Right.
So I can go ahead and print an image on the back of this one, since it was only pre-treated on the back, just to go through that.
When you change the Platen height, Roy, you need to change the offset head alignment.
No. Okay? This is what I recommend for customers, and this is what we do, just in case we change things when you got your machine or something. When I do my head alignment on the printer, setting it up, I do not use an offset head alignment. Okay? What I end up doing is you have your Platen height, you have your P to put paper down, and then it goes from 1 to 8. 1.5, 2.5, 2, 2.5, all the way down to 8.5 increments. So basically, in between is like 3 to 4. Now 3, you're kind of pushing it, but I always set my Platen height to 3. And when I do my head alignment, it's done on a shirt at Platen height 3. So my adjustment is set to 0. So if I do my Platen height adjustment on my shirt, I've already got a double up shirt, the Platen height that I'm looking at, and I'm bringing my focus plane, which is really your Platen height is your focus. Because what happens is when you're printing bidirectional and the head goes across, the ink's coming down at an angle. Then it comes back this way and it comes down at an angle this way. So you have this ink crossing. What you want is to hit right in that sweet spot where both droplets cross each other before they intersect and go beyond. So you have that little area. That is where I know when I reduce my Platen to get out of my error zone at half increments, as soon as I do that, I'm now back in my focus range. Does that make sense?
Well said. So what are we doing next?
And as far as Platen height goes, that's something you should be doing on your machine as it breaks in over time. I always tell people 90 days after you get the machine, electronics break in, voltages change. Do it at 90 days and then do it like twice a year to keep your machine running optimal as far as quality. What was that?
We're printing the back of a zipper hoodie.
Yeah, we're going to print the back of the zipper. And this specific hoodie.
Roy, you mentioned earlier specifically about ink levels or the amount of ink. You said something about extra pre-treat or extra ink, or is there something you're doing different with the amount or the settings in Garment Creator?
Yes. So basically, when you're looking at the surface of this hoodie, you see there's a lot of pits. You could see the weave. You're now dealing with a fiber that's more open. So I got to make sure I have enough liquid pre-treat to fill in all those nooks and crannies. And then coming back with the ink, I got to be able to have enough ink as well. So at the end of the day, I'm probably looking at either running at a 5, PL5 on the 2000s, or a level, I mean, not on the 2000s, on the 2100s, and a level 2 to start out on the 2000 machine. So depending on which machine you have. And then you can also crank up your white level from 0 all the way up to 50, 75, or what have you. Okay. Sorry, I just cut my head off there. So basically I'm mounting this one, standard Platen. Just going to kind of position it where I would normally be. tuck everything in. And then I'm going to use my ring again.
I like how Roy calls it a ring.
For my hoop, my frame,
Whatever you call it, that
yeah,
thing,
whatever you want to call it.
the thingamajig.
While you're doing that, Roy, I wanted to answer another question that came up here. Somebody asked about the silicone sheets that we use and that they look a little more rigid. So these are just basic silicone sheets.
Yeah, those are actually not, they're parchment paper that's used for baking, and they do have silicone on them. So the regular parchment paper that's thinner, or a lot of people use the brown craft paper, you can't reuse it as much. Now on a sweatshirt, I could probably reuse my curing sheet. I always keep them separate for curing. So I have a sheet because I don't want the chemicals from the residual pre-treat to get back on the fabric. So I'll use a different one for curing. And I could use that a few times. Because the sweatshirts are so thick, you might only be able to use the sheet maybe once or twice, if that. Okay. So basically, right now I got my Platen back up to 4. We'll start out there. Go back here, which this is really where you kind of learn the learning process of everything. You already know how to use the garment creator. You're already successful printing t-shirts. This is kind of the next step. And most of it's going to be learning how to situate and set up all the garments.
I just want to give a shout out to Roy because this is exactly the kind of training that he provides. And I hear day in and day out while he's doing this with all of our clients. This is invaluable. This is why so many people are tuning in who did not originally purchase from us. Can I spin it to the positive? Is that okay?
Yeah, you make a great point, Jay. I love the training. This is one of the highlights of Equipment Zone, is that what you're seeing now is the type of training you would get. We use this camera. Roy speaks to you and answers all of your questions one-on-one. He gets up close on the machine, moves it around, so you can feel comfortable when you purchase from us that you're going to get all of your questions answered. All right, so now you just set that up on your computer.
Yeah. So I'm now sending a job right now. This is a full, biggest print that you'd probably want to put on the back of a sweatshirt. And we're going to go ahead and get this thing printing. So I have no errors, so I'm bringing my Platen back out. Jobs processing coming over.
All right, while he's printing that, do we have any other questions that we can answer, Jay?
Yeah, now would be a great time for questions. While this is printing, you'll see the end result when we're done.
Okay, we're going back to the top. We covered craft paper.
What if your shirt is too small to thread onto the heat press?
Then you need to purchase a smaller Platen for the heat press. Unless, see what's going to happen if you have pockets and what have you, if there's any type of elastic that's going to end up on the Platen, that's infused into the garment or sewn in at any point, that's going to create an issue because that's going to get too hot. It's going to have a shiny surface, and that's not going to go away. So sometimes you end up getting some of these pockets depending on the blends, and they'll get shiny just by putting them on. Now, what you could try to do is maybe double up on a parchment paper over that area and use a little bit less pressure and maybe experiment with pre-drying your sweatshirts so you don't have that issue. Okay.
Okay, here's another question, Roy or Jeff. Just to be clear again, is it an Epson Platen or some other specialty Platen that you would use to run a front zippered hoodie?
You can use the Epson Platen. They sell the grooved hoodies. You can see them on the grooved, medium groove Platens. You can see them on their website, or you can purchase the aftermarket, which is the most popular and is used everywhere, is the Livingston Platens. Now, the only ones that come with the risers for the zippers are the 14 by 16 and the 16 by 20. The small one I showed you, that one only has the little pocket risers that you can buy. So you need to make sure you've got the 14, 16 or the 16 by 20. And you can purchase those separate. So like I said, a lot of people already have tuck lock Platens, and it's easy to start out with those. Now you can use, I don't happen to have today, you can double up on your Platen, your mouse pads, okay? So if I have more than one mouse pad, I can set one on one side, set it on the other. If I need to cut it, that's why I was talking earlier about getting a pack of 15. As long as this gap is deep enough for that zipper to go into, you're gonna be fine with using it.
Jeff, here's another question. You wanna?
Sure.
Question is, will there be an update, or is there some setting in Garment Creator to add a hoodie or a tank top or other specialty garments to help line up before printing?
No, there's basically the medium groove Platens. They do have a setting in the new Garment Creators to accept those Platens. And as far as doing it this way, what I suggest is once you get to your Platen height that you want to print at, and you don't want to waste the sweatshirt. And there's nothing wrong with if the sweatshirt you've already tested, you got an image on it, keep those. Print over stuff, move stuff around, and just kind of get an idea that it's going to print right, and then get an idea of position. You can always use an old t-shirt as well, turning them inside out. Lay them over the sweatshirt if you have a thin t-shirt to start printing, just to fine tune position. Again, you have your grid on Garment Creator, so don't make it too complicated. It's easy to take a tape measure and then go into Garment Creator. And those are 1 inch increments, and there's ½ inch in between. It's easy to figure out where you want to place it.
And we have a template for every Platen that you purchase from us.
Exactly.
So
Any
that already
Livingston
exists.
Platen that takes a special template, we have that.
Yeah. Okay, next question.
Let's see.
Hit us up, Jay.
Hit you up. Okay, reading this live, so it's a long one.
All right.
From Tina.
Hey, Tina.
We recently printed the same design on 2 cotton heritage hoodie, 1 navy, 1 athletic heather. However, dramatically different print quality. The navy was great. The athletic heather was not up to our standards. Any suggestions?
Depending on what the standards are, this one has a slight heather.
There's a probability that the heather had an increased poly too.
Yeah. It depends on the mix. Like this specific one is a complete mix, okay? The other one I showed you, that other one over here, has a 100% cotton face. So because this is thinner, this is 75 cotton, 25 poly. So there's a possibility you only need to do is do a test, add more pre-treat on that same sweatshirt. Don't throw it out. Just go back after it's dry, add more pre-treat on it, just double it up and see if that more pre-treat is going to solve the issue first. And then go back and do another print next to the one you just did after you did that at a higher setting, like level 6 on the Garment Creator, or a level 2 on the 2000, okay?
All right, so we're wrapping up this print is finishing up here. So let's zoom in on this. And let's get right here. That looks fantastic.
The other thing is on these larger images for sweatshirts, adding a distressing to your designs is nice to do as well.
So I'm going to also show a couple, just a quick screen. People have been asking about hoodies and what are our favorites.
Mm-hmm.
The brands that we like, Cotton Heritage, especially because they have 100% cotton facing, and we've done a lot of testing with Cotton Heritage. Also, Just Hoods, all we do is. AW is, all we do is, and Just Hoods. We've really had some great print results with those guys as well. I've done a lot of testing, and those are available on our website, right, Jeff?
That's right. Thank you, Jay. And if you can go back and show everybody this print and how great it turned out. All right. So we're going to wrap it up here. And I just want to thank Roy for doing a fantastic job. We covered a lot of questions. There were a lot of tips and tricks in there, stuff that you won't hear anywhere else. So we're really grateful for that. Thank you, Jay, for setting this up, for getting everybody in here, and for helping us with the questions. Couldn't do it without you, Jay. So thank you very much. A couple reminders. We'll be doing another one of these specifically for the zippers and showing how to print across a zipper. Also, as I reach off camera, we will be doing another webinar specifically for printing on face masks. We are getting tons of requests for this. This is very big. You can purchase these on our website right now. And we have a brand new Platen specifically for Equipment Zone that makes this super easy. And we'll be doing a webinar on that hopefully next week, but stay tuned. We'll be reaching out to you, but if you don't see that, you can definitely tune into our website and go to the webinar page on that. So anything else, Jay?
That's
All
it.
right.
Yep.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
See you next time.
All right. Bye-bye.